Good afternoon, everyone. How's everybody doing? I was thinking it's like midday, midweek, so I'm not sure what that means for our energy, but we've got an exciting afternoon hour planned for you. We are thrilled today. And first of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Ann Baer. I am in NF Marketing, and I'm responsible for leading the retirement plans marketing team. So our 401k and 457 businesses. And our team, we work across the street at 10 West. So for all of us, there's a little bit of a walk over here. It's not raining. That's awesome. So, and I am thrilled today to have the opportunity to present to you a presentation on connected customer relationship marketing. And we have joining us today one of the leaders at the agency with whom we work, Merkle, the Merkle Agency. And we're joined today by David McGreeny. And David is a senior leader. He's the senior person on our account and a senior leader at Merkle leading the retirement and individual wealth business. He has a lot of client-side experience working at companies like Aetna, working at Prudential, which is very relevant for us in the retirement plans business, but also has a lot of CRM experience, I think actually over 17 years of CRM experience, working with a range of different companies in a range of different industries. So I'm very excited today to have the opportunity to share with you some of the work that we're doing with Merkle, and more specifically, David will be giving you an overview of the work that Merkle has done, speaking a little bit about how we work with them. And just to give you a quick kind of preview of that, in the retirement plans business, we have what we call participants. So employees who are participating in the retirement plan, and hopefully you all can relate to this because you are participating hopefully in the nationwide retirement plan, the nationwide 401k. And as you might imagine, when you're participating in a program like that, there are lots of opportunities for you. You may have a lot of questions, and you're working to be prepared for retirement. And the program that we are working with on Merkle is a series of different touch points that speaks to different consumers at different points in their lives and gives them relevant contact, relevant action opportunities depending on where they are and what stage in terms of saving for retirement. So with that, I'm going to ask David to come up to the stage and begin the presentation.
Thanks, Ann.
David.
Appreciate it. Thank you. How is everyone? It's good not to be like the last thing before lunch or the last thing before the very end of the day. So thanks very much, Ann, for that introduction, to the whole Nationwide University team as well for having us here today. And we want to make this interactive. So we are going to plan to have some Q&A at the end of the session. But if you have burning questions throughout, please raise your hand. And my lovely assistant, Bonnie Zahorik, Bonnie really is the brains behind the work that we do on behalf of Nationwide at Merkle. And for those of you who are brave enough to ask a question, there is a little something in it for you. So it's not candy, but there's a little something in it for you. With that in mind, does anybody have a definition of CRM, of customer relationship marketing, that they would be willing to share or take a stab at? Anyone? Segmentation's part of it, absolutely. Where? You get a book?
It's basically looking at our customer base and finding out where else we can explore customer interaction with them with other products that we have to use.
What else would it allow you to do in terms of those interactions? Does it allow you to get more personal?
Yeah, it actually, you could do like birthday, greetings and, graduations, things like that. We really get to know the person and let them feel like we know them as a person rather than just a dollar in the door.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Go ahead, sir.
It also allows you to maintain something of the corporate memory, so that you have a place where you capture this information, and if the account representative changes, the information doesn't just go away, is transferable.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All great answers. Thank you. Thank you. And they're all right on, right? And actually the way we define CRM is leveraging data and analytics to drive more meaningful one-to-one customer interactions that create long-term sustainable value. That more meaningful one-to-one, that personal part, is very, very important. And there's a lot that goes into this, right? There's a huge technology side of CRM that I'm not even going to touch today, okay? Really as we thought about what would be most valuable and meaningful for this audience, is really to think about the experience and how you can bring that one-to-one personal experience from a CRM strategy. But just keep in mind that there is a whole series of technologies that have to be in place, some of which Nationwide does have in place today, and some of which there are gaps, and that's true with really every organization that we work with. So I'm going to just kind of quickly on the agenda piece here, we're going to talk about why connected CRM and what our definition of connected is, and you'll notice that we've got a little descriptor in front of CRM, and we'll explain what that is, why that's important today. And we will also talk through a case study. We're agency of record for MetLife, which might be a company that you guys know a little bit about. And we're going to share some of the work that we do there in the direct-to-consumer space for MetLife. And then we will also spend a little bit of time at the very end talking about this concept called addressability at scale. That's really all about leveraging all the data points, whether they're offline data points, customer data points, online data points, together to give a really very rich and robust picture of an individual who can then be marketed to in the manner in which they want to be marketed to. Okay? So to start with, just a kind of quickly, who is Merkle? We are a CRM agency. We were founded in 1988 by David Williams, and we were originally founded as a data processing company, literally just crunching data. That's still a big part of our business today. David is still our chairman and chief executive officer. Today, we have grown to employ over 2,200 marketing, technology, analytic, data, creative, strategy people in 10 offices in the U.S., London, England, and we have two offices in China, where we actually employ about 500 people. So a global organization today. We're actually the 7th largest and fastest growing CRM agency in the U.S. And that's according to Advertising Age's agency report. If you haven't seen that, take a look. There's a lot of great information in there. And we've also been a partner to Nationwide Financial for 4 years, managing the Participant Solutions marketing campaigns. And both Bonnie and I have been teaming with Ann and her team throughout those 4 years. And actually, it'll be 4 years in November, to be specific. But it's been a great relationship. So what is connected CRM, right? So we're kind of migrating from CRM to the connected piece. And the way we define this, and I'm going to kind of go through sort of the technical definition, and then we'll let somebody else talk about the experience piece of it coming up next. But it's leveraging data and analytics that create segmented campaign strategies. And those strategies drive those meaningful one-to-one interactions. And most importantly, it places the customer, the prospect, the member, the participant at the center of the strategy, right? That doesn't mean, the broker's not important. That doesn't mean there's not an important B2B, aspect to this, but it places that consumer, that end consumer at the center of the strategy. From there, right, once we've got segmentation and we've got a strategy in place, we create marketing campaigns that are executed, across multiple channels, and results are captured at an individual and a segmented level. So I think that actually all came up in the definitions that you all put forth. Very important, all of that great data needs a place to live, right? How many systems do you think capture data at Nationwide today? Yeah. When I was at Prudential Financial, for my team, I ran individual marketing at Pru. And for my team to get a campaign out the door, typically a direct mail campaign, we had to pull data from 147 different systems. It was a nightmare. So you're not alone. That's why I bring that up. You're not alone in that. But critical to connected CRM is having a single source of truth in the form of a database that acts as an analytic sandbox. It acts as the holder of all that marketing data. Okay. And then also very, very important, individual level results are constantly fed back in a continuous loop into the system. All right, and that's obviously done from a learning perspective to understand, what are our results telling us about certain segments, about certain individuals, and how can we leverage that information to make our next campaign that much smarter, that much more effective, that much more efficient. So with that, That was the technical definition. I'm just going to play a real quick video here, which should give you a very good idea as to what the experience is from a consumer's perspective when a brand is really connecting their CRM.
In today's world, what's the secret to building better, more profitable, more sustainable customer relationships? Connected CRM. Moving from just selling your customers to listening and responding to them on a level never before possible. Literally surrounding them with unique, data-driven customer experiences across every consumer touchpoint. Let's take Annie here. With a connected CRM strategy in place, you know a great deal about her, including that she's a very high-value customer for you. So when Annie calls your call center, your customer service reps are quietly alerted to this so they can tailor her experience accordingly. Or how about John? He's not a big moneymaker for you, but you know he could be. So when John walks by one of your bricks and mortars, you automatically push out a personalized offer right to his phone. An offer he'll find hard to resist because, well, it was made for him. With connected CRM, every customer interaction informs the next one. So you're always learning, refining, improving in real time across marketing campaigns and channels, giving you unprecedented control over targeting your marketing dollars to where they'll have the most impact. Sounds great, right? But how do you get your company there from where you are now? How do you stay ahead of your competitors, break down internal silos, and really start making big data work for you? Who can help you plan and execute all this, bringing together cutting-edge analytics, scalable technology solutions, and wallet-opening, click-generating, you had me at hello creative executions? Who? One word.
Sorry for the shameless plug at the end, but hopefully that gives you a real idea of what the customer experience is, right? And none of that is futuristic, right? The ability to literally, for me to be able to send, where's Patrick Gill? For me to be able to send an ad to Patrick because I know something about him on his phone when he's walking past a very specific store, that technology exists today, right? And you might think, well, how is that really applicable to what we do selling life insurance or retirement plans? But in fact it is, right? Because it's leveraging that data to have a better understanding of Patrick versus Mark, right? And what drives them, and to be able to deliver those types of messages when those customers are at a purchase point. Okay. Sorry, I just got to click out of this. There we go. So hopefully you're getting a pretty good picture for Connected CRM. What we wanted to do is spend a little bit of time talking about what does that mean for Nationwide Financial, and specifically in the retirement plans business. So the program that we help run, the Participant Solutions program, starts with analytics, right? And that analytics enables a segmentation of participants. So this is primarily in the public sector, so we're talking about 457B plans. And it's based on the life stage needs of that population, okay? And the whole idea here is to create these one-to-one interactions based on those life stage needs, and to really follow these participants from initial enrollment, through their years of savings, and typically in that space, those participants stick around for a while. So we have the benefit of that data over a long period of time. And then, up to and including a successful transition into retirement. Okay, so that's how we look at sort of the segmented world here. And this just gives you an example of what we look at, young savers versus mid-career savers versus those, nearing transition. And I'll talk a little bit in a minute about how we speak differently to these particular segments. But you could just imagine in a retirement setting, right, the manner in which we would talk to a young saver. It's important to save. You should do this for your future. Those types of messages is going to be very different than a message that we might deliver to somebody who's nearing transition, who has suddenly woken up and said, wow, how am I going to do this with no real income, right? And I'm woefully behind, right? That's a very, very different conversation that our data and analytics and our segmentation approach, that all comes through in the way in which we deliver messaging to that population, and the conversations that then occur within Nationwide to help those participants out. The second piece here is, from the analytics and from and the data that we have and the program strategy that Bonnie and her team puts together, there's a mix of marketing campaigns that with personalized messaging that get executed. And those get executed across a number of media, okay? Direct mail is a big workhorse, for us, but across a number of media. And the whole purpose of that is to drive leads, and calls and online engagement, right? That's the whole purpose of our campaign, because we want to create those conversations and then let our experts in DA and in the Participants Service Center really take advantage, right, of those conversations and again lead our participants to a good outcome. So this just gives you an example of a current campaign actually that just ran last quarter, and just to give you a flavor for the difference in messaging here between a young or mid-career saver versus a nearing transition participant. So this is all the same campaign, but if you just look at what's circled in these boxes here, right, for those folks under 50, we're really talking about your future is a good reason to invest more today. And the payoff to that is, can small increases today really actually pay off for me in the future, right? That's, obviously a pretty personalized message, right? Versus for those nearing transition, we're talking about taking advantage of catch-up contributions, right? And how to go about doing that, right? So that, hopefully when that participant gets into the call center environment or is talking with a field rep at a meeting someplace, that they've got that fresh start and they've got that conversation starter already in their mind. Okay. The next piece I kind of touched on a little bit. Leads are generated to those reps in direct access and the PSC, who are really focused on converting those opportunities into increased contributions, asset consolidation, and improved retention. All right. And we've seen some good success with the program, over the last year and a half, 2 years in that regard. And then finally here, results are captured by the nationwide analytics team at an individual participant level. So we can understand that we sent a message to Mark. Mark took this action called the DA. Maybe he didn't convert or increase his contributions at that point, but then he came back 2 weeks later and made that decision. So we can follow that path all the way through, and that gives us great learning as we connect to our next campaign. So in addition to the great work that we're doing here at Nationwide, just wanted to give you a flavor for some of the other companies that we do this same type of work with, and hopefully you recognize a few of those. And like I said, we'll talk about MetLife in a little more depth. But before I get into that case study example, just wanted to give kind of a little bit of additional background on why this is important. Why is connected CRM and CRM in general, but connected CRM, really important today? And it's because the age of the customer is upon us. Show of hands, how many people have bought something in the last week off of Amazon? Did you do it on your mobile phone, your laptop, your desktop, your tablet, maybe all of those devices, right? I mean, that in and of itself is a tremendous opportunity for marketers like all of us, right? Because consumers are demanding, right? They're demanding how they want to be talked to, which we just talked about, right? Where they want, and where they want to be talked to and when. And this all started, if you think about it, it's about 180 degrees from kind of where brands grew up in the 1950s, right? If you think about, the Cola Wars and soap operas, right? That was all the age of the brand, right? It was brand messaging and messaging coming from brands being pushed to consumers, okay? That lasted for quite some time, probably into about the 90s, right? And in the 90s, this sort of direct-to-consumer business model started to transform how brands looked at their customers. And with internet and e-commerce, there was more of a switch from consumers really demanding information from that brand. So a switch in sort of that approach. And then what we found in the last 5 or 6 years is that the age of the customer is upon us, right? This isn't something that we're saying, hey, you should, nationwide, you should get ready for this because it's on its way. It's here and it's been here, right? And what's driven that are social networks and digital media at scale, okay? Anybody have any idea how many users are on Facebook? 4 billion. In the U.S. alone, 4 billion. I mean, and then if you look at, if you go on and Google the top 10 fastest growing and largest companies in the U.S. today, you're going to find Twitter and Facebook and Yahoo, right, and Google, right? They're all media companies. You might not think of them that way, but they are all media companies because they have millions upon millions upon millions of unique individuals that they collect data on, that companies like Merkle work with to capture that data and really understand who these individuals are. Okay, market conditions as a result of that are really kind of creating this perfect storm for marketers, right? There's these macro trends, those digital channels at scale that I talked about, social networks at scale, and then also mobility. The mobile phone is probably going to go down as the most important invention, in the 21st century, I guess, that we're in right now, right? Just the capability and what that has done to all of us, not just on a personal and a social level, but also in terms of commerce is really astounding when you think about it. And that's causing consumers to change, right? There's a shift in media consumption patterns. I'm going to show you a little detail on that next. Changing consumer purchase behaviors. And then there's this concept of from mass consumer to consumer engagement, right? It's still important to run television in a campaign, right? Given if it's if it's the right media mix, but also coupling that with all of the channels that you have at your disposal is really what's changing the landscape for most marketers today. And as a result, marketers are responding. Again, putting that customer at the center of the business strategy, really focusing on big data, and I would probably lose my job if I went back to Merkle and didn't say big data at least once. So I've satisfied that. Bonnie can let people know. But more so, its ability to drive value, right? I mean, out of all those systems that you guys all sort of gasped about, right, that are capturing data, every company that we work with, whether it's a healthcare company, a retailer, a resort, are sitting on mounds of data that they can't possibly use all of, right? So, a sort of underlying principle here with Connected CRM is getting all of the right data, right, and the most useful data into one place to inform marketing campaigns. And the digital media piece is probably the fastest growing. 2 exabytes of data are generated a day in the U.S. I can't even actually put that into into volume, but it's actually if you think about from the period of about 1975 to about 2000, there was a total of 2,000 exabytes of data generated in the U.S. And now that's being generated on a daily basis, right? So the data on all of us, based on what we purchase, how we interact with brands, what we do on the web, who we call on our mobile phone, is tremendous, right? And that's all available. Even in a regulated environment like the one we have here, it's really all available for us to use from a marketing perspective. One quick thought, consumers, with this, how they're really consuming media today. This is just over the last 4 years. So if you look at the green line at the top, that's television consumption by daily by hours, right? So about a little over 4 hours a day, even in 2013. Is being reported here by eMarketer, which is a very reputable source. However, if you look at the orange line, that's the trend in digital media. All right, so it's gone from in 2010 about 3 hours a day to up over 5.5. Who here doesn't always have their phone in their hand or in their pocket or know where it is, right? It's pretty dramatic. It's pretty dramatic. And then the other 2 channels here, just for reference. Radio still, sure. Yeah, in this particular slide, TV is literally TV, that you sit down and watch, right? So anything that would fall into like Netflix or something like that would actually be in that digital that digital bucket. Good question. And then, print, the print channel on a macro basis has really been sort of the channel that has decreased the most in the last 4 years. But I think the biggest point or takeaway here on this particular slide is that, multi-channel marketing is still very, very important to the success of any campaign. But embracing that digital channel and how it can perform for you is really where that opportunity to scale and be most efficient with your dollars exists. So, as a result, and I guess kind of touched upon this, you have to be able to optimize across all touch points. So this connected CRM view, it consolidates the view of the consumer across all touch points, right? That's in that database that I talked about. It allows clients and brands to analyze their programs in context of the whole picture, right? So you may have as an example, you may have a broker, right, who has a certain set of customers that your brand messaging or even your direct-to-consumer messaging might affect, right? And he may think that direct mail is the only way I can find this person, right? So you kind of go through that tug, that back and forth a little bit about, well, it should be a direct mail piece, or it should be a TV spot, or it should be a display ad. The point is that you can allow the data to dictate the answer to that question, right? If it's all in one place and you can analyze it, you can show the results. That's what Connected CRM allows you to do in the context of the whole picture. It gives valuable insights on consumer value, attitudes, and behavior. This is all about creating sustainable, long-term customer value, right? Provides the foundation for effective measurement. We call that attribution, right? So quick example of attribution. I run a campaign that has a TV component, a display ad component, a paid social component, and a direct mail component. And again, Mark calls into the call center because he saw all those touches, but he called in on the direct mail campaign, right? A lot of companies still today would attribute that lead and that sale to the direct mail channel because it was the last one, right? It was the one he called in on, right? In fact, you really need a fractional model, right? Because each of those, when you can verify that we know Mark clicked on a paid search ad. We know he he responded to an email, and then obviously he picked up the phone and called on the direct mail. You're going to attribute a little more of the success of that to that direct mail campaign, but each of those channels played a role, right? And that's really important when Ann starts to think about her budget for next year, and somebody above her says, well, I don't know, direct mail doesn't work. Maybe we should cut that budget. And you're able to say, no. Here's how all these channels work together, right? So it gives us information as well from that perspective. And then it allows us to optimize media across channels that's based on fact, right? It's based on fact and not just what people believe to be the truth, okay? So with that, I want to take a little bit of time and chat about MetLife. I will say we've altered some of the data in here to protect the brand, but we thought this would be a very relevant kind of quick case study to frame this up for everybody. We've been MetLife's direct agency of record for about 4 years, and what the basic situation there is obviously they have an agent and a broker model, much like Nationwide does. And the company really traditionally sold their life insurance product, through that broker channel, and those brokers tended to focus on the upper income, the upper end of that more affluent audience. Probably no surprise to anybody sitting in the room, right? That left a very real underserved market. So the company recognized that need, and that market was in the middle market, which is really defined as individuals 25 to 45 making $150,000 and less in income, right? So a real opportunity to address the needs of a market that was essentially going underserved from a MetLife perspective. So what they did with our help was create a direct business model. And that direct-to-consumer model was designed really to drive leads and acquisition online as well as through the call center. And doing it in such a way that it didn't alienate the broker channel, which was very, very important and still is today, because those brokers and agents were able to focus where they were comfortable and where they wanted to focus on that more affluent end of the spectrum. And MetLife was able to take advantage of a real opportunity, in this middle market. So the first thing that we did, and I think the first person who spoke up about CRM said segmentation. That was the first thing, that was the first step here, right, was to create a segmentation that was both very rich and also very actionable, right? And that segmentation identified 5 segments of that middle market. The movers and shakers, which were the youngest crowd, family matters, mature planners, passives, and then loaners. All right, so this was a research-based, a primary research-based segmentation, had a complete view of the United States, and it included attitudes, behaviors, and psychographics to create these profiles. It was then enhanced with Merkle's proprietary data set, which is called DataSource, which covers about 96% of all U.S. households with 4,000 individual characteristics. So a very, very rich set of data to enhance what the member data was that MetLife had at hand. And that was scored across against the U.S. population and really gave us a very, very good view of the most valuable segments and actually the most valuable individuals within those segments to market to. Okay. From there, experience design, and I talked a little bit about this at the beginning, is critically important to any CRM strategy. So experience design is kind of a fancy way of saying, okay, in the Family Matters segment, what is it, what experience, what relationship do we want to have with people in this segment? And in doing so, it allows us to create very personalized messaging. It allows us to identify customers in a call center environment, right, beyond just a name, right, but some additional, really rich information. And it literally steps through, and I won't take you through all of this, but it literally steps through a journey map. And typically there could be 15 to 20 different use cases for each of these segments, right? Because we want to, every touch point that we have from a branded perspective with these customers, we want to make sure we're saying the right thing, right? So that there's consistency and it's a good positive experience. And that's really what the example here on the right hand says. Now, a lot of brands do this, right? Where a lot of brands struggle is actually putting this in action, right? So how do I actually start to market now? I've done all this great thinking. I understand the segments. I understand what makes them tick. I understand how I want to market to them. Now I've got to execute, right? So what we're going to talk about next, and if my friends up in the back could cue this up, this is that Family Matters, the Family Matters segment. This is a TV spot targeted directly at families and young families for life insurance. And I'll be interested to know if you guys think it's a good example once it runs of a segmented experience.
Thank you for calling MetLife. This is April. How may I help you?
Hi, I'm not sure where to begin. I'm calling about life insurance.
Well, this is a great place to start.
There's just so much to consider. How much coverage do we need? Will we qualify? And if we do, can we even afford it?
Okay, let's take those questions one at a time. I can help you decide what you need to help protect your family. Once we figured that out, I think you'll be surprised by how affordable coverage can be.
Wow, really?
Really. We want to make it easier for you to get covered.
Great. I'm glad I finally called.
Okay, let's get started. Tell me what made you decide to call today.
Well, we got some exciting news.
So that goes on to go through, some additional features and benefits and those types of things. But I'd be curious. Good example of a segmented, a very segment-specific message, right? Trigger event. Mom's got a couple of kids, got one on the way. Geez, I should check to see if my life insurance is where it needs to be, right? So even in a medium like television, you can achieve some addressability and some one-to-one personalization. Okay. Some other examples here. This is an email again targeted at the Family Matters segment. Help take care of the ones that you love. The all-important lead form online so that we can follow up with them. This example actually is of the younger segment, and it's a telesales script. We spend a lot of time refining scripts within the telesales environment with MetLife. And just being able to talk with these folks to reinforce a good decision, right? So you're smart to get insurance now, right? While you're young and healthy, before you really need it. It's a really great decision, right? They're also very busy, right? That came through loud and clear in the segmentation. So we say that to them. You sound busy. We're going to make this easy. We're going to make it quick. You can check this off and go on to the next thing, but you've done a good job to recognize that. And then one of the other key learnings in the segmentation was that they didn't want to go through a lengthy application process, right? So we addressed that as well within the script. So scripts take you a good part of the way there, and actually it allows you to really connect and not be confrontational and not feel like the person on the other end of the phone is being sold. And then the conversations tend to usually go a lot better. Display ads. Display was a very important part of the campaign. Actually, through the way in which we match, and I'm going to talk about how we match anonymous data online to known data to create profiles of real people. Display ads, in this case, in a process that I'm going to explain here in a minute, could actually be served to specific individuals who had contacted a call center, and then we found them online. Okay, so it's a pretty powerful tool. Search was is a very big part of this this campaign, and then paid social. Those of you on Facebook who spend some time on Facebook are seeing more and more advertisements within that environment, and paid social actually has become a very key part of our campaign with MetLife as a result, because we're able again to target a very personalized message within that platform. So from just a results perspective, we've been able with MetLife to establish this direct business model and to do it at scale. So before, they had a very narrow mix of tactics. It was basically direct mail. It was direct mail to the masses. After, we expanded tactics across platforms, email, affiliate channels really being all the search and display, in particular. Before, they had tried some paid social. They said it didn't work. Paid social actually is the top performing channel in this campaign today. They had a very unstructured testing approach. CRM is all about testing, right? Test what you think you want to learn. Once you learn it, test it again to make sure that you actually did learn something and that you applied it, right? So that constant cycle of testing is very important, and it needs to be structured, right? So today there's a very structured testing approach across the entire business. There was very little focus on creative message or experience. I think in the creative I just ran through, you can see that there's a very strong focus on creative, on messaging, and what that user experience is. And then most importantly to direct marketers, a 34% decrease in cost per lead, right? So it's efficient, and they're doing more with the money that they have. And also a 26% decrease in cost per premium, which is how they measure their business. So huge impacts. And if you extrapolate that out over 3 years, we have 3 measures that we look at. Again, this has been altered a little bit to protect the brand, but the net present value of the revenue impact of this campaign in terms of acquisition of new customers, reduction in churn, and then improvement in satisfaction scores is exponential year over year. Right? And this is a very good representative example of where Connected CRM is really adding value, not just in hundreds of thousands of dollars, but in millions and millions of dollars to this business. So you might be asking, how do we link this all together, right? How does this actually happen? How does this experience happen? Well, we connect CRM through a concept that I mentioned at the very beginning called addressability at scale. Is that a foreign term? Has you guys heard that before? Okay. Addressability at scale is the backbone of these connections that I've been talking about. It allows us as marketers to connect large amounts of anonymous consumer activity, right? So I'm on the web, I'm surfing around, and nobody knows who I am, right? I go from there to responding to an email from the same machine. All of a sudden, companies like Merkle can start to make a connection, right? I've got an IP address from the website. I've got an email that's been clicked, right? So I start to gather information, right? And I'm going to walk through an example here in a little more detail. But it's connecting those large amounts of anonymous activity in digital media back to known data, right, to customer data, where you have a name and an address. And that allows us to identify and target prospects and customers online and create personally identifiable information. PII, is that a term that people are familiar with at all? Okay. I would think in this regulated environment it would be. But PII is king, right? I mean, we want, as marketers today, to create as much PII, personally identifiable information, as we can out of that anonymous data, because that's what allows us to really reach consumers where they are online, okay? So that PII, that identifiable information, it's captured solely through analytics, right? It's gathering data and analyzing that data. And if you think about it, there's been kind of a long history here, right? You know, in 1990 and earlier, there were a few brands that figured out how to leverage the U.S. Postal Service for name and address, right? That's obviously identifiable information, right? Know who you are, know where you live. Then came the advent of the large telcos, right? And being able to append phone number to to that name and address, right? Gave a whole another channel, right? That was fantastic in terms of acquisition and prospecting through the telesales environment. Then you had kind of the third iteration here, which was email addresses, right? So again, if you follow left to right, the ability to have a name and an address, link it to a phone number, link it to an email address, and then today, what we're really talking about is taking that information that we know and going out and finding people and being able to link all that data together in terms of cookies and device IDs. So this is where it gets a little scary, right? It does get a little scary. So go ahead, sir.
So are firms like Google and Facebook reselling that now as a service?
From a platform perspective, Merkle and other companies work with the Googles of the world to make those linkages. They don't resell the data in a traditional sense, but they open their platforms and the individuals on those platforms to marketers. So we have yes. We don't ever physically take in that data, right? But we can leverage that data to create our own unique identifiers is the simplest way to think about it. Yep. Mm-hmm. Not by name. Not by name. But through a series of linkages that I'm going to run through, we can identify who that person is. Yep. Go ahead.
You guys please wait for microphones so they can hear you in other locations.
Okay, my question is, how regulated is CRM industry as a whole? What are the regulations? What you can and cannot do in this industry?
Highly regulated. Highly regulated. So as an example, I do a lot of work in the healthcare space. So we're governed by HIPAA, which is, I'm sure, a term that everybody knows. When you go to the doctor, you have to sign that form, right? Highly regulated. And so there are government regulations to the transferal, the storage, the security of data. And then obviously we work with all of our clients within the auspices of sharing data that you all have in place that I'm sure you're familiar with here at Nationwide as well. So very, very regulated. Any others right now? Sure.
Hold on, 1 second, please.
Check. So in relation to that question, beyond regulation-driven stopgaps, what are we doing, or what does any industry, or what does any company in the industry do to regulate what makes sense as far as reaching out to the customer versus what could end up appearing to the customer as infringement of their data? Like getting a hold of somebody. In the example you showed, the guy walking down the street, something pops up. It's like, wait a minute, who's watching me? Why,
Sure.
That type of
Sure.
thing.
You're referring to the creep factor?
Exactly.
You know, there are standards. There's kind of some common sense standards that are, you know, that as marketers you want to put in place, and there certainly are regulations as well. You know, where you can be fined for activity like that. But you know, I think the best way for me to answer that is that, you know, as an example, when we go through an endeavor like, you know, making data requests for a certain campaign, right? What we really need is name and address. You know, I have clients in the healthcare space that want to send me claim information. Well, I don't, it's great to have, but we don't really need it necessarily to target consumers with a specific message. So I think it's being very prescriptive on the data set that you ask for, and asking for what you need and not more than that from a marketer's perspective really helps to make sure that you're not using data in a way that allows somebody to get creeped out, for lack of a better way to say it. Does that make sense? Absolutely. Our data governance within Merkle has a security arm, has a legal arm. I actually sit on that board as well from what we call a vertical market perspective. So what's actually happening within the insurance and wealth management space. And then we're very active. There are a number of government regulated boards through the FCC actually. That we plug into as well. So those are constant. There are constant updates, to security and to process and procedure. So often with data and data governance, it's not about the policy itself, right? That's important. It's the processes that you have in place. We have a new hire and they've gone through the data security training within 2 weeks. Versus, oh yeah, well we let them get to it when they get around to it, right? So it's the intent typically governs most of that activity.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
So how large is your organization compared to the Merkle company?
Our data organization?
Yes.
Our data organization.
Your data governance.
Data governance. Mm-hmm. So data governance, within our data solutions group, we have about 250 individuals. The data governance team is probably 10 senior individuals. Well, we're about 2,200 employees all together, So it's a small, in terms of the governance board, it's a small group that leads that. But we do pull, we pull individuals in from our technology group, from our analytics group, from our, data management group as part of that process. You're welcome. Anybody else? How am I doing on time, Adam?
You have about 10 minutes.
Perfect. So I wanted to, I just got a few more slides here, and then we can go back to Q&A. I wanted to kind of take you through an example of how we identify individuals by linking anonymous data to known data, okay? So let me orient you to the chart here. On the left-hand side, the vertical axis there, we've got a level of identification, and it goes from anonymous to partial identification to full identification. Along the bottom, it's a level of knowledge. And when you're talking about understanding who a person is online, those are really the two measures, right? So you've got identification and knowledge, right? So in this example, a relatively low, level of both knowledge and identification is, there's a consumer who reads a story on retirement, at a news site, and we're able to log their IP address, all right? So through that, right, and keep in mind, I'm not really talking about the technology that allows us to do this. I'm just giving you the experience here, right? But through that action, right, we're able to understand that there's an individual in a specific region, right, because an IP address can actually get linked to the Victorian Village up the road here, right, versus Westerville, right? And we also know that they have an interest in a topic. So in this case, they've got an interest in retirement. Okay? Where we get a little more information, we get a little more kind of a medium level of knowledge, is the consumer's IP, right? So that's a code, right, that's on everyone's digital machine, whether it's a laptop or a cell phone, is cross-referenced with publicly available data showing the general location where they live. Right? So these are data sets. I mentioned data source, which is our proprietary data set. There's data resident within that allows us now to take the region and the interest in the topic and get us to a specific location. Right? So in the first example, right, we knew that you were in Columbus. Now with this other third-party data is where the Westerville versus Victorian Village, kind of connection starts to come in. Okay. Then a higher value link here is that, later that same IP is logged at nationwide.com, right? So we've tagged your site, right? We've put a Google tag or a Merkle pixel, right, on your site to track this activity. It's logged at nationwide.com, and now we start to have a picture, right? Because once they've gotten now to a brand that we're marketing to, right? So we've got a campaign as well. We know the region they're coming from, the interest in the topic, the specific location they're coming from, and then they also have interest in a specific product, right? Because in this example, we knew they were interested in retirement, but now they might be interested in a 401k, right? Or they may have landed on a page that's about how to save in my government municipality, as an example, okay? But you can see the progression, right? Now where it gets really interesting is if you take those three instances and you start to kind of amp up the level of identification. So the consumer clicks on an online ad for roll over your old IRA, which conveys their city through the IP address. So again, we're kind of starting on the knowledge spectrum where we did, on the identification spectrum where we did on the knowledge spectrum. Then the consumer submits their email address, again, that all-important lead form on that email I showed you earlier, which helps point the way to data about them that is elsewhere online, right? So we've got that IP address. They've now clicked on an email. We're able to link those things together. And then where it gets very, very interesting, and this is why the fastest growing companies in America today are media companies like Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, Snapchat, believe it or not. Snapchat's got a great platform. A lot of people on Snapchat. Now the consumer logs into Facebook providing an exact name and identity, right? So we know everything we need to know. Every time you log on, how many times do you go onto a site and it'll pop up and say, do you want to log in with your Facebook ID? Who does it? All right. It provides very personal information about you when you do that. It's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. Go ahead.
How effective, if at all, things like in private browsing and this kind of thing, you think they protect you from someone understanding the situation?
Like anything, it's the more information that you give, right? That's where that level of identification starts to ratchet way up, right? So if you're just on your home laptop and you're not utilizing an email, like you're not clicking into an email to get to that particular site, you're pretty anonymous. You're pretty anonymous. But once you respond to an email from that same machine, maybe in the same time frame, right, in the same session, that gives us another data point that allows us to kind of narrow that gap of who you are. Does that make sense? So this is very powerful. This is really very, very powerful. And that's actually that progression that I just walked through. That's really at the heart of what we call addressability at scale, right? Yeah.
Can we just come back to the creepy factor part again?
Sure. Stand up.
I was just going to say, the question earlier, I think it's sorry.
You can.
Phone. Oh, can you pick me up on this?
Somebody can bring you a mic.
Okay.
Sorry.
That we're streaming to not.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, I was just going to add, I just want to go back to the question that was asked earlier, because now you've seen how all this data gets, kind of pulled together. Just because you know it doesn't mean that you're going to go out there and you're going to use it in a way that's going to make someone uncomfortable. I mean, it's our job as marketers to make sure that we're creating a positive experience for our customers. So one of the things that we do is we take a lot of the information we know and then we ask ourselves, you know, what can we do for this customer, especially when we're doing something like participant engagement. These are already your customers. You're not trying to acquire them. They're your customers. So we try to create a positive experience for them. So we might reach out thinking that they might be interested in a product, and the positive response that we're looking for is engagement. Yes, that's exactly what I was looking for, and they want to engage with you. What we don't want is to say, we know that you've been doing A, B, C, D, E, and therefore we're going to send you this communication. Right. You know, it never should feel like that. So I just wanted to kind of come back to that original question. A lot of what we do in participant solutions is reach out with an offer of help. So if there's some indication that, you know, maybe they've stopped contributing to their plan, they need some help, they need some guidance, we reach out with an offer of help. And what that should feel like to them is, yeah, I really need some help, not
versus we know you stopped contributing to your plan. Like, that wouldn't be the message, right? But in fact, we do know that. But the way in which we message that, I think, is what Bonnie's driving at. So I'm going to wrap up here real quick. Adam, I still have another minute or two, right? Sort of? Exactly 1 minute. All right. Addressability at scale. You know, from an awareness perspective, what this really does, and you're going to purposely see kind of a fat funnel here, right? Much wider, right? Marketing at scale finds more qualified responders and widens that funnel, right? Segmentation, and we start to understand more and more about that consumer or that customer. That allows us to get more of the right people at the top of the funnel, top of the sales funnel. And what you're going to see here in orange is some results that we've seen amongst a number of clients where the available impressions have increased by 400%. Really what that means is we were able to show them ways to spend more money more effectively across digital media, okay, at a favorable ROI. In the consideration side, more qualified responders create more qualified leads more efficiently. Kind of makes sense, right? We've seen CPLs, like in the MetLife example, decrease by 30 to 40%. Pretty dramatic. From a remarketing perspective, this is where it gets really interesting. More qualified leads drive better remarketing outcomes, right? So again, Mark went into the PSC with a phone call, didn't take any action, right, in that particular call, but then we were able to send a display ad to him, or when he was on Google in a search setting, we were able to serve up a display ad, right, that spoke directly about Nationwide Financial, as an example. And we've seen dramatic decreases in cost per acquisition as a result. And then on the conversion side, again, this is really all about lifetime value. Who are my most valuable customers? How can I get more of them into the fold? And then market to them through the whole sales funnel. Go ahead.
Sorry.
Thanks. You're talking about how important paid social advertising is. How targeted can you get with that?
Very. One-to-one.
One-to-one.
Because again, in a social platform, you've logged in with a unique, your login, your unique login. So, once you identify that way, we're able to use that data to inform other actions that we've captured.
Hey, David. I think we're going to have to wrap it up.
I'm going to run through this and get to the thank you then.
All right. Great. You guys are going to be here, Bonnie and David, for a few minutes. So, folks, if you have more questions, I think you guys would be happy to entertain them at the end up here. So, first of all, I wanted to thank you, David and Bonnie, for all your work in the presentation and for joining us today. And also would like to thank the group for joining us for this session today. Thank you, and have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Thanks. And please stop outside. There's some goodies on the table, a couple of books, a marketing imperative book. You're free to take, and there's a sign-up sheet. If you'd like a copy of the Connected CRM book, just sign that sheet, and we'll get you one free of charge.